Okay, let's unpack this. We're about to launch into a deep dive on something incredibly personal, yet often unseen, the very nature of your consciousness.
Right, and specifically this idea, which can be surprising that it isn't just one thing, but maybe exists in distinct levels or stages.
Exactly. And we're looking at a model from one of our sources today. It's a transcript from a YouTube video. The 6 stages of consciousness, only one leads to freedom.
Mm-hmm. It's a fascinating framework. It suggests most people are operating from, well, a limited state without realizing there's more.
So our mission today is kind of using this model as a lens, maybe a map,
Yeah.
to see where people often are, where maybe you feel stuck, and what potential lies beyond that.
Yeah, the core idea here is that consciousness isn't static, it evolves. But the trap, according to the source, is living in those early levels and mistaking it for the whole human deal.
It paints this picture of an unseen trap, doesn't it? Like a cage built by evolution, reinforced by, well, everything around us.
Right, and what feels like free will might often just be us cycling through these really deep automatic patterns.
So where does this map even begin? The absolute foundation, right?
Yeah, the model points to where everyone starts, usually without any conscious awareness of it. Survival consciousness.
Makes sense. I mean,
Yeah.
awareness probably didn't start with deep philosophy.
Not at all. It started to keep us alive. This level is described as raw, automatic, deeply ancient,
Its purpose is just one thing: stay alive.
pure survival.
Mm.
Consciousness here is almost totally fused with the body's instincts, according to this model.
Okay, so the drivers are the really basic things.
Absolutely. Hunger, pain, immediate fear, desire for safety, comfort. The model highlights the brain's oldest bits, brainstem, limbic system, are basically running the show.
So every threat seems huge. Every reward feels urgent.
Exactly. It's that classic react first, think later mode.
And historically, that worked. Kept
Yeah.
our ancestors safe in a pretty dangerous world.
Incredibly effective, yeah. But even though our world's changed, that old operating system is still running.
Silently, in the background.
Often silently, yes. And for many, this model suggests it still dominates reactions. You see it, right? Heart pounding when someone cuts you off.
Yeah, like it's a life or death threat.
Exactly. Or that intense drive for wealth or status, feeling as crucial as finding food once was.
It seems primitive, but the framework calls it persuasive.
Oh, it is. It knows how to hijack the mind and body. Now, right on its heels, usually once basic survival feels a bit more secure, comes the second level, emotional consciousness.
Okay, so this is different. It's not just physical threats now.
Right. The world gets filtered primarily through feelings. Desire, anger, jealousy, deep fear. These become the main lens.
And that's the key difference from pure survival mode.
Big difference. The mind starts reacting not just to immediate danger, but to imagined threats.
Imagine threats. Like what?
A perceived slight from someone, the fear of being rejected socially, anxiety about failing at something important.
Ah, okay. And there's a psychological loop here.
Yeah, insights align with this model. The limbic system, especially the amygdala, is constantly scanning not just for predators anymore, but for social threats, potential loss of status or connection.
And it triggers the body before we even think about it.
Before the rational mind fully processes it, yes, that stress response kicks in. And then emotional memories lock these reactions in, creating repeating patterns.
Patterns like always needing approval or fearing being alone.
Exactly. Or needing to control everything to feel safe. It's tied to deep evolutionary stuff, too. Belonging to the group was survival. Rejection could literally mean death back then.
Wow. So those ancient circuits react to modern things like a mean comment online.
Or a cold look, or feeling left out. Same basic wiring, different triggers.
And the model suggests most people live here.
Mostly.
The vast majority of their lives, yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of trapped between raw instincts and this constant emotional roller coaster. Decisions become reactions.
Relationships feel like battlegrounds. Identity forms around these feelings.
Completely. The emotional self feels like the only self there is. And the really striking thing is how normal it all feels.
Totally normal. That daily anxiety, always wanting something more, fearing loss, it feels like the default human condition.
But this framework says it's just the first layers. Designed for survival, not necessarily fulfillment.
Precisely, not fulfillment or deep peace. So the critical first step, according to this model, is just recognizing it.
Noticing when actions are driven by fear or needing validation or those unconscious loops.
Yes, that moment of seeing it is like the crack in the wall. You have to see the cage to even think about stepping out.
So what's beyond that reactive world? You said something radically different.
Radically different. A type of consciousness that doesn't just react or feel, but reasons. analyzes, questions. This is often where people feel a real awakening starts.
But you also mentioned another trap here, even at this level.
Yes, even this powerful level has its own subtle, often invisible trap. It's a major shift, though. Breaking free from being ruled by emotion feels like, well, waking up.
The mind steps back, observes the feelings instead of just being them.
Exactly. Logic starts to take the lead over those knee-jerk reactions. This is the rise of rational and intellectual consciousness, a huge leap.
This is where abstract thinking really kicks in. Language gets precise, science offers answers.
Patterns get recognized, complex systems are built. Humans start analyzing life, trying to understand it, not just feel through it.
And our sense of self gets stronger here.
Dramatically stronger, I think therefore I am, really captures it. The mind draws sharp lines. Self, other, subject, object.
So achievements, titles, beliefs become the new security blanket, replacing those older tribal fears.
In a way, yes. Intellectual pride, personal capability, modern civilization is largely built on this stage, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Science, medicine, tech, law, government, all based on rational thought.
It builds cities, writes constitutions, decodes DNA. It creates meaning through knowledge and progress. It rescued us, in many ways, from pure emotional chaos.
But here's the catch you mentioned, the invisible limit.
Right, the illusion of arrival. The thinking mind is so effective, it can easily believe it's the peak. That logic is freedom. That knowing enough will finally quiet those deeper anxieties.
Is there a neurological basis for that feeling?
There are some interesting links. The brain's default mode network involved in thinking about ourselves tends to be very active here. The sense of me solidifies around thoughts.
So reflection can turn into just going over and over things, rumination.
Easily. And intelligence itself can become like armor, ironically separating the mind from the world it's trying to figure out.
And, if you listening are drawn to this kind of material, exploring consciousness,
Chances are you've made this leap. You're operating significantly from this rational stage. You feel that pull to question, analyze, find frameworks.
but it has a ceiling, you said.
It does. The rational mind is brilliant for solvable problems, but it struggles with the big questions it can't analyze away.
Like suffering,
Yes.
where consciousness comes from.
Exactly. Philosophy, psychology, they all hit this wall eventually. The intellect can't reason its way beyond thought itself.
So the trap tightens. Intellectual mastery feels like power, but it reinforces the ego, sharpens those boundaries.
It can, yeah, locking you into the belief that thinking is being.
And people who settle here, the model suggests, build lives on knowledge, logic, maybe skepticism.
Often, yes. Mystery feel uncomfortable, vulnerability seems weak. The heart's input gets sidelined, emotions are analyzed, not felt. Connection might be based more on shared ideas than shared humanity.
But there's another shift possible, beyond just thinking harder.
Yes. One that reasoning can't force. A space where the mind's grip loosens and empathy starts to soften those walls.
This sounds like a different kind of intelligence taking over.
It's described as a point where the intellect kind of exhausts itself. The search for answers out there feels hollow. More knowledge doesn't satisfy that deeper thing.
So it's not sharper thinking, but a change in perception, a softening.
Exactly. A softening of the boundaries the rational mind works so hard to build. This is where consciousness, in this model, moves its center from the mind into the heart.
Heart-centered consciousness.
Yeah.
So empathy isn't just an idea anymore.
It becomes a natural response, stemming from feeling deeply connected to others. Judgment fades, compassion replaces calculation. You start seeing people as reflections of your own experience, not just roles or ideas.
How does that change your perspective on things like success or suffering?
Fundamentally, suffering isn't just their problem, it resonates. Success feels hollow if it leaves others behind. Decisions flow more from connection than pure self-interest.
Spiritual traditions often talk about this as the real start of waking up, don't they?
They often do. Dissolving walls, not just gathering knowledge. For many, it feels like coming home, the end of that deep isolation, belonging to life itself.
And beyond the heart, there's more.
This model suggests an even rarer expansion can unfold. Cosmic consciousness.
Cosmic. So the sense of separation starts to really break down.
It begins to collapse fundamentally. The world isn't seen as separate objects anymore, but as this unified field of experience. There's no outside, no other. Just consciousness aware of itself in countless forms.
Have studies looked at this? Mystical states.
Yes, and they note common traits. Loss of ego boundaries, overwhelming peace, a profound sense of being part of something vast yet intimate.
And brain scans, anything interesting there?
On advanced meditators reporting these states, yeah, often shows a quieting of that default mode network, less self-referential chatter. A freedom from the constant May story.
So in those moments, what's it like? Nothing to achieve, no identity to protect.
That's the description. Time can dissolve, space loses distance, the universe feels alive, conscious, interconnected, the mind just stops searching, there's nowhere else to go.
And some traditions point even further, to non-dual consciousness.
Yes, this model mentions it as the final stage, where even the subtle observed distinction dissolves.
No self watching the universe, just awareness.
Awareness is present, but without a center. No experiencer, only experience. Pure flow.
But this isn't described as just bliss, is it?
No, crucially. It's presented more as this quiet, maybe even unsettling realization that the self you always identified with was maybe just a thought construct all along.
Yeah, it must be hard to talk about. Language relies on separation.
Incredibly difficult. Subject, verb, object, our whole way of communicating breaks down. Words struggle when identity, memories, desires, fears just dissolve into everything.
So non-dual is what's left when all the stages fall away.
That's the idea in this framework. Very few seem to live there consistently, it acknowledges, but knowing it's possible changes things.
How so?
Once you glimpse that potential for non-separation, the old game status, survival fears, intellectual certainty, they can start to lose their absolute grip. What felt like the peak looks like a stepping stone.
And there's no map or technique to get there.
Beyond this point, apparently not. Maybe just a quiet pull towards what was always here, just unseen.
Okay, but here's something important this model highlights. Reaching these states doesn't mean you stay there. Right.
Absolutely critical point. Glimpsing heart-centered or cosmic awareness doesn't mean permanent residency. Those moments feel permanent when they happen.
Boundaries dissolve. It all makes sense.
Perfect sense. But then life pulls you back. Bills arrive. Arguments happen. Old stuff comes up.
And it's easy to slip back into separation, survival mode, ego, without even noticing.
Incredibly easy. This is described as the nature of consciousness. It cycles. Expansion, contraction, clarity, forgetting. No stage is permanent. No level is a guaranteed lock.
And that leads to another subtle trap.
A very subtle one. Mistaking the memory of transcendence for the thing itself.
Ah, so you wear the experience like armor? Convinced you're above it all now?
Maybe unconsciously, yeah.
Yeah.
This framework points to spiritual bypassing. The ego reforms, but uses spiritual language detachment, oneness as shields.
Avoiding the messy work.
Avoiding the hard, humbling work of integration, as the source puts it, floating above grief, anger, judgment instead of meeting them.
So real transcendence isn't rejecting the lower levels.
Not according to this. It's circling back through them again and again, but with a difference.
The difference is how you meet them when you return.
Exactly. When you find yourself back in survival fear or emotional reaction or intellectual argument, do you react blindly or respond with some awareness gained from those wider states?
Do you meet life needing control or with presence?
That's the question. The real growth isn't how long you stay floating, but how honestly you meet the moments that pull you back down.
Can you bring that memory of unity into conflict, into loss, into just ordinary life?
That's the real work, this perspective suggests, staying open, especially when everything wants to close down.
It's quite clear. No experience or practice makes you immune to being human.
Not a flaw, but the design itself, as this model presents it. Consciousness isn't a straight climb, it's a spiral, a constant return.
So each time you spiral back, maybe you see more clearly, carry a bit more understanding.
Perhaps. And eventually the realization might dawn that it was never about reaching some final, fixed destination.
No permanent peak where you're done. The rational mind wants that.
Deeply wants that certainty. But what unfolds is more alive, more dynamic, less predictable.
We rise, fall, open, close, some days expansive, others small.
And none of it is failure. It's just the current moving.
And maybe that's the whole point. Growth isn't how high you climb, but how deeply you return.
How deeply and honestly you meet every layer, even the ones you thought you'd left behind, with presence instead of resistance.
Because each time you return like that, you bring something back.
More awareness, maybe, less fear driving. And slowly, the shape of life changes. Walls feel thinner, old stories lose weight.
More room for silence, connection, just this strange, beautiful experience.
Exactly. The work isn't toward perfection, but something much more human, more real, more alive.
So we've traced quite a path today through this model, from instinct and emotion through reason into heart, cosmic, non-dual awareness.
hmm And a key takeaway isn't about staying at the top or escaping the bottom. It's understanding the cycle, the spiral.
And that emphasis on integration seems crucial, bringing awareness back into daily life.
The hard, necessary work of breathing that spaciousness into the grit and the grind.
Which leaves us with a really powerful thought, doesn't it? Building on this framework.
Yeah.
If being human means experiencing all these levels, the rising and falling, maybe freedom isn't escaping any level.
Hmm.
Maybe it's found in accepting and integrating all of it, meeting each moment, each layer of yourself with as much presence as you can muster.
Not transcending being human, but fully being human with awareness. That's a profound place to reflect.